So we are on episode 10 of Dumpling School. So thank you for everybody that's been watching. Thank you for my audience that's been joining us with streaming. This is awesome. Thank you, girls. Um, Again, some of our information, there might be some terminology that would be really useful if you actually understood the things that CS Joseph makes. Again, the school link will be listed. That is skool.com/CS Joseph. Um, Definitely will have a link here. Today, we're actually going to be talking about an important topic called healthy boundaries. Um, I know a lot of times people start talking about things and they're like, oh, yeah, set boundaries. And like, well, the question is, how do you actually set boundaries? And what is a healthy boundary? What is an unhealthy boundary? Um, because boundaries give us that room that we need. Things that we like, don't like, that spaces we don't like, expressing what our expectation is, our rules. So, um, we're also going to discuss a little bit, and I'm going to start here, and I'll come back to it in a bit. Um, a lot of times when we actually do need to talk about healthy boundaries, it is usually with um, what is it called? Family or friends or something like that. So there is a level of this of um, your own parents, your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, extended family is usually one place that healthy boundaries are a big must. Also, friendships can need healthy boundaries as well. Um, and I'm going to say that there's a different set of boundaries, or not. I'm going to say that there's a different way to do this when you're actually talking about a relationship as a couple. So, like myself and my husband would have a different method of doing things than setting boundaries, in a sense. So, I'm actually going to talk about that later, but mostly what I want to talk about first is actually basically the poisonous relationships that we get. Sometimes we get to choose, sometimes we don't get to choose. Um, a lot of times when I hear like a really need for boundaries, it may be somebody that is a lady that's kind of grown up, got married, and she's having to deal with in laws or her own parents. Um, and potentially, for some people, potentially friends or friendships that have gone bad. Um, so, when do we actually need boundaries? If there's somebody in your life that um, and I'm going to say, when you're under 18, I guess, and living with your parents, sometimes there's limitations of what you can and can't do as far as boundaries. Um, some parents will actually listen to boundaries, and some of them will not. The best time to be able to have our boundaries is usually when we are um, out of the house. So this might be living on our own, and this might be married. That's usually when you're old enough to say, hey, look, this is not acceptable anymore. Oh, got to stream. Give me a second. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. I started everything and I didn't put my video piece in for my live audience. So anyway, um, so there are times that we need the boundaries, and I'm going to suggest that there are times that we may be too sensitive. So why would we need boundaries? If somebody is coming into your space and they're punching the walls, they're breaking things, they're being controlling of your access to stuff, Um, if you have to fear the reaction more than the issue that is the problem, if you have to actually truly figure out the mood, and only when the person is basically in a good mood is when you can actually work with them. Um, if they're basically having no empathy when you're hurt or upset, um, if you're constantly being disrespected and silenced, if the other person is intentionally starting a fight, whether it is for their own pleasure or their own means of doing things. Also, if you have to try to calculate what their mood is before talking, that is a decent list of other types of abuse that people can get from various relationships. Um, when, and I'll give this example, my stepmom uh, would be verbally abusive on the phone with me uh, after I left home. She would choose to say things that are very, very rude, very, very unkind. Um, and I had to gauge what her mood was before actually talking to her. And a lot of times, what she would say would be very, very dismissive. Um, and sometimes, when I actually was talking about something that's important to me, it was just kind of dismissed as being very dramatic, or me being very dramatic. Um, that is a place where I needed to set a healthy boundary. My I needed to have some relationship with my stepmom, but I was out of the house, so I didn't have to have a constant discussion with her about everything. So, um, that's kind of those needs. And honestly, if you have friends that are mistreating you, um, that is actually a time to make healthy boundaries. If you have a in-law or a distant relative, not just distant, like additional friends, a cousin, a aunt or uncle, or somebody that is outside your immediate family, that is a place to set healthy boundaries. What I do want to say about your immediate relationship, let's say your spouse, um, boundaries tend to come across as ultimatums and can make the relationship worse. Uh, so I hesitate to call that boundaries. That is a place where the two of you need to talk and communicate. It opens up and engages a vulnerability between the couple. Um, and it actually models it also for your kids. So don't don't leave that out of there. When you model this, basically expressing the things that are upsetting you. So um, let's say you do not do something correctly. I'm going to talk as a UD woman here. Let's say I leave something out that needs to be put up. My husband will say, "Hey, I do not like it when you do this." Okay. He may actually share why it upsets him, why he doesn't like this, and then it becomes a matter of obedience on myself. Um, Usually, it's easier for me to jump to being obedient when I actually have a reason. It makes it a request, not a demand. And it helps me be an obedient wife when I actually understand what he's asking. Um, when when he does something that I don't like, I do this whole thing where I politely say, I don't like that. I basically use my best expression. I express the things that are bothering me and I let him help come with that solution. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's not do this anymore. And that usually creates that ability to work together, to be transparent with each other, and to have good communication between us. Um, so, yeah, good communication is what is needed between a couple. Um, Basically, engaging our vulnerability and our basically talking things out so that both of us actually get a clear cut of the things that we are interested in, or our preferences for whatever issue is at hand. um, and that basically sets up a system in our house to make everything go smoother. So when he requests that I do something a different way, then I actually start putting that solution into motion, and then we don't have the problem anymore because we have set up not just a boundary, but we have done communication, and we have a new, what is it called? A new system that we're doing. It's basically a solution system or something like that. A process. That's the best word. So, one time he didn't like how I was handling the kitty litter, and so we changed the process. And once that process was good, this is how we do things, and this is our process. It's not really a boundary, it's a new process. So, boundaries start coming in as we get outside the family. So, um, let's say I'm on the phone with my stepmom or my mother-in-law, and she starts being rude to me. Well, what I can do is basically limit her access to me. So I am not required to spend, a certain amount of time talking to her on the phone. I do need to be respectful. I do need to be polite. I do need to contact her at periods of time, but I am not required to clock in 30 minutes or an hour phone call. So let's say she gets on the phone and she starts being nasty and rude to me. Um, what I can do is say, hey, what you're sharing with me, how you're talking to me is very, very rude. I do not appreciate that. And you know what? I don't have to listen to this anymore. Goodbye. And I hang up the phone. Another, a little bit softer, even more UD way is to have my husband set the boundary. Let's do a different scenario. Let's say um, I have a dinner that's going on, and my mother-in-law comes over and she criticizes all the things I did wrong with my food. Uh, the other option is I could express to my husband that she just really hurt my feelings and how she's talking down to me and that type of thing. And then let him go and say, hey, you don't need to be doing this with my wife. She is very hurt. And if you continue doing this, we will not have you over anymore. Basically, I let my husband set the strong boundary after I expressed to him. Um, I can do some of that myself. Uh, of course, there's also like, if she's actually not being rude, basically getting tips and tricks from her and understanding things better, that's another option. But when I actually have to do boundary, let's say she is doing it intentionally, being mean-spirited, then I can actually say, hey, I don't like how you're talking to me. This is a little bit more SD side. I don't like how you're talking to me. After dinner is over, we will not be biting you back until you learn how to respect me and my family. That is setting a boundary. Also, things like sometimes we have times that we are required to spend with family. Let's say there's a Christmas dinner. I've actually used this before too. Let's say there's a Christmas dinner and I am going over to somebody else's house. and the people in question are very rude, dismissive, rude, you know, um, disrespectful, things I or my husband and I don't like or don't enjoy. I can spend my limited amount of time and then find a way that, oh no, it's time to leave. And it's possible that next time I go over, I might say, we are just going over to give hugs and exchange gifts, and then we'll be leaving shortly afterwards. And when they ask why, we could say that so and so has been continually rude to our family, and we're trying to be respectful, but as long as they continue to have bad behavior, we're not going to stay there because maybe not just rudeness, but I may be additionally uncomfortable with something. Um, and I'll put this there. Sometimes moms have some gut instincts and um, can be very suspicious that somebody in the family, let's say an uncle or aunt, is being um, unsafe to their kids. We'll just call it unsafe to the kids. You can have your imagination go all over the place on this one. Um, you may not want that person around your kids at all because of them being unsafe to your kids. You can actually make a very strong boundary saying, hey, as long as that person's there, we are going to be spending very limited time, or they are not going to be alone in the house with that person. Um, although it's nice for um, let's see, it is nice for kids to go spend time with their grandparents or extended family. Um, if it's unsafe to do so, it's unsafe to do so. There is this thing called no. No means something that we're not going to do. We're not going to allow until the kids are old enough to also say no. Um, and sometimes there are people in the family we have to have that type of strong boundary with. And that's very unfortunate, but things happen sometimes. And when you're getting an odd feeling that there needs to be a strong boundary, saying no is actually the best option and the healthiest option. It doesn't mean that they can't spend time, but that means they can't spend solo time. Um, not on the, like, say, sexual abuse, but there was somebody in our family that was very unaware of things going on. Uh, we'll just say they would be oblivious to kids getting into trouble uh, in dangerous ways, like grabbing sharp objects and running around with them type of dangerous ways. So my husband and I made a decision at one point that we would not allow our future children to go over there unattended, where we could not see, so that we could make sure that nobody's doing something dangerous. Um, it's it's kind of the thing of leaving a toddler unattended for an extended point in time can be very dangerous. Um, and they're like, oh, they're just playing. Well, you know what? Sometimes toddlers need a little bit extra supervision, and unsupervised kids can get into a lot of problems. So that was a boundary that my husband and I were planning to make when we have kids. Um, so yeah, this is not sexual abuse side, but just basically attentiveness. We wanted to make sure the kids could take care of themselves a little bit before spending a large amount of time. Um, so, and this goes into what are expectations versus what is a boundary. So sometimes we have expectations, and expectations are things that may be unspoken or unsaid. Um, so when I have seen moms see this, it's like when they take their kids to get babysat, they kind of have a certain amount of expectation of the quality of care that the kids will have. So let's say they take them to, we'll just use a church daycare. So the kids are going to sit in the room, play with safe toys, and not hurt each other. This is a nice, good example. So the mom has a certain level of expectations. They're going to expect the person watching the kids are being attentive and that there's enough supervision for the amount of kids that are there, um, that diapers, if needed, will get changed, certain things are taken care of, stuff like that. We have expectations. Um, the expectation, if somebody is not doing what they're supposed to do, we can have our expectations, what's it called? Not met. So let's say I take my kids to like the church daycare so they could, sit there and play for a while with other kids. If I notice that whoever's watching the kids is unattentive, if I notice that the kids are being extra rough and nobody's stepping in, I may choose to say, hey, this is my expectations. That is basically they have hit something that is kind of, what is it called? A covert contract of what is expected for the kids to do. Um, or here's another silly one. Let's say you come over to my house and I have a nice coffee table, and I may not put my feet up on the coffee table, and I kind of expect the guests to not put their feet up on the coffee table. I haven't said anything about that. I haven't actually shared that, no, that I don't like that. Um, I may have that expectation. um, but I have not said it. That is an expectation, not a boundary. Me telling the guest of, hey, would you please not put your feet on the coffee table? Now that starts becoming going from an expectation to a boundary. Um, so expectations can be a bad imploder habit. So, us UD girls and our some of the SD guys may actually have expectations that we are not sharing. So yes, us UD girls, please share your expectations. Um, because we may expect people to treat us a certain way, and we might be projecting how we would do it onto our guests or onto the other thing, and we are not actually sharing what our expectations are. And it is actually quite quite helpful to have a little bit of boundaries until a person gets to know you better. Um, or where you feel unsafe, or where you have a preference of not doing something. I live in a house that has a mix of hard floor and carpeted floor. And um, on the carpeted floors, I don't want food or drink in there. And to me, if somebody is going upstairs, I will actually specify that I don't want food or drink dragged upstairs. I will set this as no, this is my boundary here. Please do not do this. And I will clarify that so they could hear it. I will make sure they know I do not like this. It doesn't mean I will kick them out as soon as I will just remind them of the expectation, or basically the boundary. And most people, if you clarify what's going on, and express like why you don't like it, um, they will actually respond nicely and actually start doing that. Others may actually start pushing that boundary. You know, let's say, what's it called? Hmm. They will actually start pushing the edges like, well, you don't like this, but what, how about this? And how about this? And I'm going to do it anyways, or I will sneak it as long as you don't know that I'm doing this, it's okay. Um, and that's sometimes where we need to start pulling in. So we express our discomfort in what's going on, and then we may need to say, hey, so I am not going to be around this person as much, or I will limit my time with this person until they actually take care of those boundaries. Um, and somebody commented earlier that uh, some types of some of the types might actually write a literal contract of their expectations for the other person to follow, make it very, very clear what their expectation is, and actually that is a very smart thing in some places, um, and that actually helps do that type of thing. um, let's see. Oh, okay. Sometimes expectations can just be expecting somebody to have a certain level of character. And if they don't have that character, they could just go bye bye. Um, or expectations can be that somebody will do such and such. And if they don't, it's time to pull back. But again, I say those start becoming covert contracts. And it can, if you have covert contract with somebody, um, let's just use the example of my stepmom again. Um, if I basically allow her to be very rude to me on the phone and I just stay on the phone, it can create a lot of hurt within inside me, and it can create a lot of bitterness inside me. It can create resentment to where um, it puts extra strain on the relationship. However, if I actually express that discomfort and say, look, if you're rude to me, I'm hanging up. Or let's say she starts being rude to me and I just hand the phone to my husband. That's another option. Uh, I just basically will take the phone, hand it to my husband, and then he'll say, hey, you're being rude, goodbye, and click. That is a way to basically express what is going on and what is that hurt, and allows them to change their attitude and their have better behavior. And honestly, boundaries is protecting yourself from other people's behaviors until they can improve their behavior. And, and that's why I'm kind of hesitant to have boundaries between a couple, basically your spouse, uh, however you have your arrangement set up. But basically, when you have protection between that, you're stopped communicating. You're just pushing away. And so, yeah, family, friends, or basically extended family, friends, that's the places to really have good boundaries. And those that you don't know as much, those are the people that need more space. Those that are closer to you, they should know you better. They should be able to have that vulnerability time. Yeah, even a friend. I mean, there's certain friends that are cool. They're cool. I don't mind going and hanging out with them. They might come over to my house, but I wouldn't hand them the key to my house so that they could walk in anytime they need to. I have other friends that I trust them enough that they will not be a problem. They would basically come over. announce. They would respect my property. They would take care of things. They would be respectful when they are at my place. They would be respectful of my stuff. And so I can actually have looser boundaries with that type of person, that type of close friend, where there are people that I don't know. They're not even going to get through my front door. Um, let's just say a salesperson that walks up. Um, those people have a lot of boundary there that I'm not going to talk about, but they're not going to get inside the house unless I actually trust them to a certain extent. They are a stranger. So strangers have high boundaries. People we know have a little bit less, and people that are really, really close. So yeah, my husband, yeah, he is where I have the most vulnerability, the most communication, the most expression, the most connection. And, the person reading the gas meter only needs to come up to the gas meter. They don't need to go any further. And even now it's Wi-Fi anyways, and they just drive past and collect the data. They don't need to knock on my door. Um, I don't even need to talk to them. And sometimes family, yeah, family sometimes can be close. And sometimes family needs to have that space because some family can be trusted, some family can't be trusted. And sometimes family, there's people that are going to hurt me. And so maybe I give them 5, 10 minutes to talk. And then it's time to say, okay, well, we've had our conversation. Happy birthday. Goodbye. Um, so yeah. Uh, so best solution, practice good boundaries. When you have a parent, you do need some communication with them. But if they're being rude, if they're being disrespectful, sometimes that's time to say, hey, look, you can't treat me this way anymore. Same with your in laws. Um, and if you have a spouse and they need to step in, let them step in. Um, let them step in and say, hey, look, you can't treat my wife that way. Um, if you're going to keep treating my wife that way, uh, we're going to create some space. So anyway, that is Dumpling School number 10 on boundaries.